Okay, hello, welcome to the 87th episode of the Online Tennis Podcast. Deja vu, as we've got Vansh on the show again. Vansh, how you doing?
Doing awesome, Jack. Love doing these shows with you, and it's cool bits of an analysis squeezed in right after the match.
Today we're going to be talking about Medvedev's win over Jannik Sinner in the final of Miami Open. Fifth Masters title overall, his 19th title, his 19th unique title, one of Vansh's favourite stats, I'm sure. 19 different titles in 19 different places, absolutely wild. 6-1 and 6 meetings for Medvedev against Sinner. We're going to get into that match as much as we can in a bit, but we're going to start with the semi-final between Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz, which was, of course, an absolutely fantastic match that I'm sure Vanch is going to enjoy peeling back a bit.
Yeah, so my overarching thoughts are, it was such an incredible rivalry that's developing, and they've played each other 6 times. They're now 3-3, and each match has seen one or the other role reversals or tactical adjustments made by either to counteract the other strengths and weaknesses, and they really come to bear when they play each other. And it's really really high quality. It's usually extremely physical, and you see exactly why tennis is so excited, and rightfully so, because when these two face off against each other, it's always a blockbuster. But definitely I felt like in this match we saw some changes from Sinner, and so we got a really good feel as to why this matchup is, say, different than Sinner versus Medvedev, for example. We really see that contrast with Carlos really looking to take more control, looking to be the aggressor and dictating, and he just looks rushed because Sinner is able to take so much time away from him with his, really good technique on his ground strokes, the way he takes the ball extremely early, hugs the baseline. Carlos really feels like he's being robbed of time, and that squeezes a lot more errors, maybe some shot selection errors, maybe you see a few more missed break point chances. It really forces Carlos to play a lot more controlled tennis, and we know he's obviously capable of doing that. He's made those adjustments. He won Indian Wells playing like that, patient and controlled. But on these faster courts in these conditions with Sinner playing that well, it certainly posed quite a bit of challenges. And we also saw Alcaraz struggling a little bit physically, cramping at times, particularly in the beginning of the third set. Sinner was really cruising at that point, and then we saw a little bit of a resurgence midway through the third set for Alcaraz, but Sinner really played wonderfully well tactically, particularly his serving. Was really a big factor. I thought. I mean, you pointed out on Twitter, obviously, that Sinner had a set point in the first set of the Indian Wells semifinal, and he was serving at 49% first serves in. That number completely went up in this match, and it absolutely had to, for him to really have any chance.
There's two things there in particular I'd love to flesh out, and the first one is the fact that Sinner is one of the few players on tour that can rush Alcaraz, certainly off both sides as well. We saw from the back of the court, Sinner was able to make headway, and part of that was just prioritizing a lot of pace over placement. We saw him go sort of fast
Yep.
and loose with the direction of his balls. A lot of the backhands down the line weren't necessarily close to the line because a lot of the time you can't hit round Carlos. You've got to
Yeah.
try and rush him first, especially on a fast court. Indian Wells, the ball sort of sits up a little bit, it slows down, perfect for Carlos to set up his shots. But here in
Exactly.
Miami, when we saw Sinner going down the line, particularly with his backhand, he was going closer to the middle of the court, prioritizing a lot of pace to try and to rush Alcaraz, and that's why you get these phenomenal, crazy rallies a lot of the time. Because I mean, if you try and hit round Carlos, take a little bit off to get placement, he's going to get to that ball anyway. The boy is
Yeah.
fast. I mean, his defense is just insane. So it was a really
Yeah.
good sort of change, and I suppose the conditions sort of played into that as well. I think if the conditions had been fast in Indian Wells, we may have seen a similar thing from Sinner there too. And it worked really well in his favour. Seeing that as well, it wasn't just Sinner's ability to rush Carlos. One of the biggest things, he touched on it, was the fact that his serve was a lot better in this match. And generally, it's improved. I think last
Yeah.
year, even during the US Open, we wouldn't have seen this sort of serving performance under pressure from Sinner.
Yeah.
We've seen him make differences to serve in the past, switching from pinpoint to platform in 2021. Now he's adding pace to the shot. We did touch on it previously, but now he's got a lower ball toss, upper body coil, wider stance, deeper knee bend even. All of this starts to create a lot more racket lag, creating way more power for Sinner to deliver his first serve, which adds up to a lot. more pace on your flat delivery, right? Sure enough, on the break points in the second set, we had 1, 2, 3 of them, I believe, that Sinner saved with, I think, 2 massive wide serves in the ad court, and then he changed up down the tee. So that flat delivery really, really proving solid when he needed it most. However, with
Yeah,
that said, we'll get on to why this is relevant in a bit. It wasn't so relevant against Alcaraz. But without that slider, he's got that toss that sort of leans a little bit to the left, a lot more difficult for him to get that cut short in the deuce box away from the player. He does sometimes struggle against a better or a more neutralising returner than Alcaraz, a la Medvedev. But we'll talk, properly flesh that out in a bit. It's the same for Alcaraz and fellow quarterfinalist, by the way, Emil Ruusuvuori. None of those guys have that good a sliding serve, and you could see the difference in the final match. But against Alcaraz, big under pressure, big flat delivery, able to win him a few points when he really, really needed it most. I mean, we were at 4-3, 30-40. Sinner saving that was key because, Alcaraz breaks there 5-3, you would have fancied his chances of winning the match. So huge under pressure there from Sinner.
yeah,
One other thing to point out about rushing Alcaraz, and this was such a good play from Sinner, rather than trying to keep the second serve in a spot that would be awkward ordinarily for other players, he went big into the body, which is, I mean, if you kick the serve to Alcaraz, he's going to lean into it in the deuce court, that backhand return down the line. He loves that, to rush players with that. He's so good at taking those balls up high on return and stepping into it,
yeah,
using his body weight to generate so much pace off that shot. You need to jam him up in the same way you can kind of rush him during a rally as well. So I thought that was a really, really great tactic. I don't know if the courts were fast enough for him to do it in Indian Wells, but certainly we saw his second serve average go up from 94 miles an hour in Indian Wells to 102 miles an hour in Miami. So it was clearly something that Sinner had on his mind, and it was key to saving himself from a few sticky situations in this match too.
yeah. I think Sinner's return is extremely impressive because he's 6'2", and he's able to cover a lot more ground because he's like a very tall 6'2", if that makes sense. Really lanky,
Yeah,
has got the long
gangly.
arms, and he does a good job of getting returns back deep
Mm-hmm.
and to the middle of the court. Like it's not always like placed brilliantly, but because of the pace and the depth coming right at you, it's right at your shoelaces every single time. And he's so good at that. And then on his serve, I noticed that in the Indian Wells match, Sinner was having to hit a lot more first ball backhands after he was serving because what Carlos was doing is he was rushing Sinner's backhand side because he was getting it in a really good spot, like on the ad side to the Sinner backhand, and forcing him to kind of play a stronger backhand on the third shot than he would like. Otherwise, he was going to be in trouble. And we saw that because Alcaraz is able to take returns early, and like you said, the height doesn't really bother him. So on a higher bouncing court like Indian Wells, which is slow, he's able to really time those returns in a perfect sweet spot, both on the deuce side on his backhand and forehand for that matter, but particularly on the backhand. And then I think also the inside out forehand return on the ad side, he's able to get that deep into Sinner's backhand, and then he has another forehand to
Yeah.
um, do damage with. So I think that's why the conditions were so big in this one, and that's why also at the U.S. Open, Sinner was able to get to match point. We saw a few times Alcaraz tried to pull the trigger too early on a second serve at times, and I mean I'm thinking about the break point chance he had in the third set. I think Sinner was serving at 3-2, and Alcaraz has a break chance, and second serve return backhand kind of short from Sinner. He was lucky to get away with that
Yeah,
one,
he
and
was.
Alcaraz that was maybe a crucial juncture of the match where if he gets that break back, he's starting to feel a lot better after the cramps.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe he finds another second win. But Sinner did really well to fight it off and get the insurance break, of course, at the end.
Yeah. I'll jump into the final now. As I was saying previously, Medvedev certainly seems to have Sinner's number. That's still an understatement, actually. It's 6-0 now. Obviously, 5 previous meetings had been indoors, but to be honest, the way this one panned out was pretty similar to a few of their indoor meetings. Maybe not Rotterdam so much, in that a lot of the rallies were a lot shorter for Medvedev, but ATP finals comes to mind. There have been matches in the past where Medvedev's got a clear serving advantage over Sinner, and he's got a good enough advantage from the back of the court as well. Keen to flesh both of those thoughts out and then hear your own thoughts, Vanch. First thing I would say, that ability to absorb against Sinner is just so effective. Certainly in Rotterdam, I mean, so many of the rallies were over 9 shots. You had more rallies over 9 shots than in the 5-8 rally length in Rotterdam. So, I mean, the fact that it's also easy enough for Medvedev on serve, so difficult for Sinner every single service game here. I find Sinner, the harder he hits it, Medvedev, it's not like a wall necessarily. It doesn't come back fast. He brings it back like a sponge almost, or a mattress is what I've got written down. It just sort of, not like totally slow balls back, but that pace is totally absorbed to the point where,
I know what you mean. I was thinking of an analogy, and I
go,
thought of. Have you ever played Super Smash Bros. Brawl?
yes, I have.
You ever play as Kirby?
I have all, yeah, Kirby's a great character. Well, not a great character to go
Yeah,
by.
I mean he's one of the best characters you can play as in that game because he just soaks up all that pressure and he sucks the air out of out of anything you throw at him. So if you throw bombs all over the place at Kirby, Kirby's just gonna deflect that pace and just absorb it all. And just like that's what Medvedev does. That's how he beats you. He just eats up that court.
Love that. Yeah, Medvedev as Kirby is a great metaphor. I really like that badge. So yeah, I mean, Medvedev's willing to just. He's honestly, he's one of the best controllers of pace in the game. He knows when to float the ball back. He's not trying to smash the ball back or anything. But out of nowhere, if you give him time in the forehand, he's gonna hurt you down the line. He will.
Yeah,
He'll hurt you down the line. It's not like he can't create his own pace. He kind of sneaks you with that one a lot of the time. So whatever Sinner did, he tried to rush Medvedev. It doesn't work. He defends so well off of both wings, keeps it so deep in both wings. It doesn't matter how deep you keep it yourself. It's going to go back the same length. It was just so hard for Sinner to do anything. So we ended up with 7 rally winners for Sinner to 31 unforced errors in a rally. Now that is a
yeah.
huge, huge deficit. You're talking rally length 5 plus for Medvedev, 25 points to 11. So more than 66%. That is massive. The lower shot rally, actually 0 to 4, wasn't awful. That's where the biggest deficit comes here. And it was the same in Rotterdam as well. Medvedev just able to have Sinner's number regardless of what Sinner threw at him at the back of the court. One other thing to talk about here, Vanch, before I hear your own thoughts, a little bit on that serve gap. Without that sliding serve, Sinner just had very little way of winning a free point out here. Won 5 of his 9 points, I believe, when he slid a first serve out wide. They're not even really sliders. It's not got that much slice on it, right? It's kind of a flat delivery that's not hitting
Yeah.
that short, sort of up the juice box point that's really going to cut the angle. With Medvedev's return position to boot, chances of you winning a free point on that juice side are pretty unlikely. So he had to work hard. He
He's got to
still,
work on that. He's got to work on that slide serve.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
it's not good enough right now against Med.
My
We saw Alcaraz deploy it really effectively,
Yeah,
but Sinner has work to do there
he,
for sure.
he absolutely does. And we sort of saw the master showing the apprentice what to do here. In Medvedev's second serve strategy, now this is fascinating. In the juice court, he went 64% of the time into the Sinner forehand. Now, I didn't think this was, or I thought this could have been an anomaly maybe. It's not an anomaly. This happened in Vienna. This happened in Rotterdam. Medvedev is doing this consistently in the juice court. He's not rolling it in. He is hitting a fairly pacey slider out wide into the Sinner forehand. He is respecting the fact that Sinner will attack the forehand if he gets the chance. He's delivering sort of 105 mile an hour, close to around that speed out wide in the juice court, an aggressive second serve. And it basically gave Sinner no opportunities to attack with the forehand in that second serve side. And then with the court open, Medvedev attacked a lot of the time, and it worked wonders. I mean, forehand, backhand, the thing is he can find that open space regardless of what wing he gets. Sinner would have had to have made an early move to attack on that side. And maybe he was privy to it, I guess, because in Rotterdam he went there pretty much. Medvedev went out wide exclusively in the juice court. This time he mixed up a little bit, but it was still most of the second serves were going towards Sinner's forehand side. I thought that was fascinating, Vanch, and the fact that he's winning more points. So he won 5 of his 7 second serve points sliding serves out wide in the juice court. The fact he's winning a higher percentage of second serve sliders than Sinner is on his first serve tells you a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, and also I was very impressed with Medvedev's forehand in this match. The pace that he was getting on that shot. I mean, he was matching Sinner in forehand MPHs for the
Really? Did
baseline,
he?
which
Wow.
we weren't at fault in the beginning because if you looked at average speed. I mean, in the first 3 or 4 games of the match, he was averaging 81 miles per hour on his forehand wing, and he was I mean, he was thumping the ball, and I wondered if some of that was the humidity and the heat, and maybe maybe he's tired, but he's not, so he wants to end points quicker. Maybe maybe he has a plan to move away from Sinner hitting down the line backhands, because if Sinner hits down the line backhands, now all of a sudden he's got his own forehand that he can set up. And he didn't do that much in Rotterdam. In Rotterdam, we saw a lot of neutral backhand to backhand exchanges, and Medvedev getting the better of them because Sinner wasn't going down the line early enough, often enough. He wasn't giving himself enough forehands, and Medvedev was beating him in those really long rallies of 5+ shots. And I actually thought Sinner, when he went up a break in that first set, he was helped a little bit by Medvedev's second serve falling apart. I think two or three double faults, an unforced error to get the break. But Medvedev breaks right after that, and I still felt like Sinner was just mis-executing and missing a lot from the ground, more than usual. But he at least was hitting more forehands than backhands, which wasn't the case in Rotterdam, and he was still finding the Medvedev forehand more often, which is key because Medvedev sometimes hits it short on his forehand when he's trying to defend, versus on his backhand. I mean, he's going to get great depth. It's going to stay really low. It's going to be unattackable. It's going to be really hard to hurt Medvedev by brushing his backhand. But the thing is that when Sinner was serving at 5-6, he went away from that tactic that was actually working. Now all of a sudden he was rolling most of his backhands cross court, taking some of the pace off, and Medvedev was the one attacking. And Sinner was having to play a lot, was having a tough time holding in that service game, and he gets broken.
I believe that game ended with 4 rally unforced errors. I'm pretty sure. So,
From Sinner. Yeah,
Medvedev putting him under a bit of
yeah.
pressure, and it's a typical Medvedev break, 4 rally unforced errors.
Yeah, and he knew that Medvedev knows that once he gets that first set, he's such a good front runner. He's barely lost a final. He's only lost two finals in his whole career after winning the first set. One of those was the Australian Open final last year, and the other was the Paris final between him and
Yeah.
Novak in 2021.
He hasn't lost a match this year from a setup either.
Yeah, so he's one of the best front runners, and then obviously Sinner feeling the emotional, physical, mental effects of that 3-hour marathon against Alcaraz. And I think we learned after the match that he was not feeling his best physically. He was a bit sick. You could sort of see that in his body language and his, not willing to suffer as much out there. Understandably so, I guess, the heat, humidity, and all of that. So we didn't really get to see the best of him, I thought, in the second set because of those reasons. But also, it's just a very difficult matchup for him for many of those reasons that you highlighted. And it also exposed some of the things he desperately needs to work on. His forehand drop shot was a killer for him in this match. He tried it 4 times. He was 0 for 4.
I think he might,
They weren't
honestly,
going over the
he
net.
might have been similar numbers in the Alcaraz match as well. It's not
Yeah,
exclusive to this matchup.
it's definitely it's very raw right now. Like it's good that he's thinking about it and he's adding this into his arsenal, but it's just yeah, he's got to work on that execution. Same thing with the volleys in the forecourt.
Mm.
He gets caught sometimes. He doesn't look very natural when he's trying to split step and get closer to the net, finishing them off. That's definitely something he has to work on.
Yeah,
I think the serve direction and accuracy overall. I think it's good that he's added the MPHs, but he needs better accuracy,
yeah,
particularly that wide serve on the deuce.
yeah,
I think that would need some work, and it's just more physical durability in general. I think he's done well. He's definitely put on some more muscle in his quads and his lower um, body. So I think that's boding him well. It's making him more explosive in the corners, but he's got to continue working in those areas because yeah, like even the gains that he's made right now, it's to go 7 matches like this or 5 or 6 matches and backing up a Alcaraz win, it's tough. And like Medvedev just totally sensed that Sinner was struggling physically, and he just was all over him.
yeah.
Really, it's not.
I fancy his chances moving into clay. Obviously, Medvedev's filled with confidence, but without that ability to slide, he won't defend anywhere near as well as he does on a hard court. So
Yeah,
most players in the top 10 should still be able to get the better of him. I'm sure he could still surprise people if he gets a fairly good draw in some places. On the other side of that for Sinner, with the serve maybe winning him the odd free point with that flat delivery, slider's not as important on that surface, and the weight of his shot at the moment, his movement's still looking great. I fancy his chances
yeah,
in any tournament for sure. He's got a very, very good
I do
chance.
too. Yeah, he is, and he's improved a lot. He's the top four in the race now, and clay is a pretty good surface for him overall, particularly like Monte Carlo and Rome and Roland Garros. He should be going deep in all those three places.
Yeah.
Honestly,
So, Sinner, improvements in the serve making the difference against Alcaraz, the lack of completion on the serve hurting him against Medvedev, stuff to do. Great news for Medvedev, though. Might be the last we'll see of him winning for a while. Who knows? He might still win another title on the clay. Who knows, to be honest, with Medvedev. Certainly in Madrid, where the altitude is high. We'll see going forward. With that said, Vanch, I think we could stop the episode there. I've said enough, I think, unless you've got anything else to say.
No, it's just Medvedev on clay is going to be interesting. He has a week to get ready for Monte Carlo, where it's weird, but the last time he played this, he made the semifinals, and he beat Tsitsipas and Djokovic along the way, and that was 2019.
Yeah.
And a lot has changed now, obviously, but if he were to do something like that again, he's certainly good enough to still win a few rounds for
Yeah.
sure. And then he's gotten to the quarters at the French and made the final in Barcelona. So I wonder if he's just going to carry this momentum and how quickly he's going to get discouraged. Because the main thing he was saying is that on a hard court, I can still win matches when I'm not feeling
Yeah.
my best, like I did this week, and I just have all that confidence in the world. But on clay, if I go down a break or I go down a set, I start to really
Yeah.
lose it. So yeah, it'll be
It will
interesting.
be interesting.
It'll be just interesting to see his mindset. Yeah, the whole journey will just be so fascinating because
Yeah.
he's now got more ranking points post Australian Open to Indian Wells and Miami finish than he did the entirety of last year
Wow,
after the
yeah.
Australian Open.
Fair
So
enough. Wow. Yeah, to be a fly in the wall for his chat with Gilles Savara going into the clay season, I'm very, very interested to see what happens. Very good to put that into
yeah,
context there, Vanch. We'll close up shop just before we get to the half-hour mark. As always, thank you very much for coming on. This was last minute again, so Vanch, a million thank yous. Hope you enjoyed being on.
yeah, it was awesome. Love it.
Thank you very much. And thank you, listener, for listening today. If you want to catch any of Vanch's work, please go to @VanchV2K. I'm on Twitter @ontheline_Jack. YouTube, like, subscribe. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time on the On the Line Tennis Podcast. Cheers. Thank you.